So I said in the last one that we were going to finish off the drop and drag and drop. So let us do that. Let us head into the systems folder, inventory system and interface, and then open up your inventory slot. The very first thing that we're going to do is we're going to double check that our visibility settings are correct. So the slot image should be visible, and the rest of them should be either hidden or not hit testable. So this one should be hidden and not hit testable, not hit testable. Which it should be, actually it's hidden, so that's fine too. Let's head into the graph and head into our drag and drop, and we have our on drag detected. Now let us add the on drop. On drop is going to be quite simple for us. We're going to just cast to our inventory drag drop, and then we're going to make some functions later on. First though, let's promote this to a variable so we have access to it easier. I'm going to call it inventory drag drop. Actually, let's add a reference to that as well, just for the sake of it. Now we want to validate our slot. Are we dropping something? We are dropping something on this slot, but do we have anything in our slot? If we do not, then we can just set our info to the incoming one. So let's get our inventory ref, set item info at index. Index is our index, and the items comes from our drag drop. And remember, we have a function for that. So get details, get drag details. And that is going to give us our item in a quantity. After this, we can just return with a success. Now, if we are valid, then we're going to have to do something else. We are going to make a new function, and it's going to be called valid stackable slot. You can add a question mark to that if you prefer. That is going to be a pure function, and it's going to have an input of our master item. And we're going to call it inc item. We are also going to promote this to a local, so local inc item. And then we're going to get our information on our slot. So get your inventory ref and get item info at index. And we're going to check if the item we have is the same as the incoming item and boolean. If the quantity is less than the max stack size. And where do we have our max stack size? We have it in our item defaults. If it is less than the max stack size, and another pin if it is stackable. This is all going to return, this is all going to return with a boolean of valid. Then we can go back to our on drop. And out of this true now, we can drag in our valid stackable and add a branch. The valid stackable slot comes from our drag details. And if this is not a valid stackable slot, we want to swap the slots around. So let's add a new function and call it swap slots. Swap slots, drag drop. Let's call it that. We want to swap, first though, we want to cache, so get item info at index. We want to cache this information so that we can change it without losing it. Let's promote this local, so local cached item. And then local cached quantity. Then we are free to change the information on our slot without losing that information. So set item info at index. Index is our index like so. And we want to set it to the drag details. We want to set the item to the item and the quantity to the quantity. And now we want to get our drag details, and we've got our inventory ref over here. So we want to set item info at index to the slot that we were dragging from, because that is where we want to swap it to. And we want to set it to the cached item and the cached quantity. Once this is done, we can return. That is going to handle our swaps for us. Let's head back to our on drop. If it is not a valid stackable, okay, well, then we're going to swap slots. And then we're going to return with a success. However, if it is true, there is a valid stackable slot, then we're going to add to the stack. So let's call a new function called add to stack. And here we are going to get our information on our slot. So get item info at index. Index is our index. And we're going to check if the quantity plus the incoming quantity, so get your drag drop ref and get the details. We're going to check if these two are greater than the max stack size. Actually, if these two are less than or equal to the max stack size. It's going into a branch like so. And we need to get our defaults out of our class in order to get our max stack size. Now, if this is true, then it's very simple. We can just set our slot to the information of this item and this addition. So we can just get our inventory here, set item info at index. This goes into true. And we just want to set it to the same, like so. And the addition. So let's get our, actually let's delete that and just get this entire thing. That is our quantity, and this is our item as well. And then we can return. That is going to handle if we have room for it. Now, if we don't have room for it, then we're going to get this again, this addition over here. And we're going to do this addition minus, so subtract the max stack size variable. And that's going to give us an overflow. So we want to set our slot to be be equal to the max stack. And we want to get cache the overflow so we have it for later. So let's promote this to a local cached overflow, local overflow. And that goes into our false. Once we have cached our local, our overflow, then we can set our item info to be that of max stack size. So we can just grab this over here. So item becomes item, and the quantity becomes the max stack size, like so. And then we want to go to our drag drop and get details, where we have our inventory ref, which we can now set item info at index from. The index is the index it comes with. The item is the same as our item, and the quantity is going to be the overflow, because this is what we didn't have room for. And then we can return. That is our onDrop as add to stack function complete. Now we can return with a true. Let's go into our AB folder, into our systems, inventory system, and then item. I'm going to duplicate this dummy. I'm going to call it BP stackable. And I'm going to rename dummy 1 to BP non-stackable. Now I'm going into stackable, docking it up, and opening full. I don't need to open full actually for this, but we are doing it anyway. I'm going to call this one stackable. Stackable is going to have a purple thing, 5 stack size. And then non-stackable, so we don't actually have to do it here. Non-stackable is going to be non-stackable and stuff like that. Yeah. Now we can close out of those and head to our third person character, where we are currently adding the items manually. So we're going to add 2 more. Remember, our stackable stacks up to 5. So I'm going to add it to index 1 and index 2. I'm going to add stackable there. And then I'm going to add 3 in each. So that's going to give us an overflow of 1 and a max stack size of 5. So now I can drag this and put it on top of there. It's going to swap them around when it's full. Actually, it's not swapping them around here. It's filling up that one and leaving the overflow. This one is going to swap it around as it wants. And yeah, that is now working as it should. Let us add a way to drop our items quickly. So inside your AB, inside your systems and your inventory system, we're going to make it a blueprint class. It's going to be an actor. It's going to be called BP dropped items. Dropped items, we can open it up. And I'm going to add just a trash bag from Quixel. So I'll be right back. So now I have my trash bag here. I'm going to add a collision box. And this is just so that I can control more where the mesh is actually going to collide. I'm not going to bother too much with the collisions over on the mesh. I am going to add the basic collisions though, regardless. Just add a box simplified, and honestly that should be enough, and I should not need if I just block it here. I'm going to keep the box collision though, because fuck it. Moving my static mesh into the box collision, and I'm just moving it down inside of it. Now I want to add a sphere collision, and I'm going to call this my interact sphere. like so. And then I'm also going to add a widget component, which I'm going to call my pickup loot widget. I'm also going to add some variables, so I'm going to add a items dropped. Now this is going to sound a bit counterproductive because you're only going to drop one item at a time, but this is also going to be used when you, for example, break a chest. Then it's going to drop all of these, right? So items dropped is going to be ICT_inventory contents, and it's going to be an array. Now that we have this, I do want to make the widget for this. So let's go into our content, AB, systems, inventory system, and interface. In here, I want to make a user widget. I'm going to call this my WBP pickup loot widget. That is all I'm going to do here. It is going to be very simple. It's just going to be a text that says press E to pick up. I'm not going to show the items it can pick up because it can be multiple items, so I do not want to add a vertical box and deal with that quite yet. I'm going to do a dummy text, press E to pick up, like so. I'm going to change this color to a little bit different and maybe outline it. Press E to pick up. I'm also going to justify this to the middle. Now if you want, you could, for example, we could wrap this with a vertical box, and we could have a let's see, we can call this amount of items, and it's going to be variable, and we can press X24 or something, and that is going to be basically just telling you how many items there are. Now let's go into our graph. In here we can make a new custom event. I'm going to call it update info. It's going to have some inputs. So the first one is going to be the ST inventory contents, and it's going to be an array. I'm going to call it our dropped items. We're going to promote this to a variable. Then we're just going to do a length, and we can set text of the amount of items to be format text x curly bracket num like so. That is going to give us the amount. We might need to minus this by 1. We'll see. Now let's go to our dropped items, and let us go to our pickup loot widget and set the widget class to our pickup loot widget. This does look okay. I just want to move it a bit down, maybe like 200, and let's change it to screen. Now let's head over to our event graph, and on begin play, actually we do need a AC inventory component here as well to our dropped items. And here on begin play, we want to get our AC inventory component. We want to set max slots to be that of the items dropped length. We then want to get our pickup loot widget. We want to get widget, and we want to cast to our pickup loot widget. And we can actually promote this to pickup loot widget ref, and then we can call our update info. And the dropped items is the items dropped from us here. I'm also going to go into my interact sphere, and I'm going to add a on component begin overlap. And I'm going to cast to third person because it's the third person that we want to check if it's overlapping. I want to set the player ref, and then I want to select the pickup loot widgets first of all, and I want to set it to be set the visibility to be off, and then I want to drag out my pickup loot widget. So when we collide or overlap, we want to set visibility to be visible, and then we want to enable input. Enable input like so. The target is ourselves, and the player controller is get player controller. If we select our interact sphere again and begin end overlap, we are going to cast to third person character. We are going to get our set visibility nodes and reverse it. So set visibility to not be, and then disable input. Set it to be hidden, that's what I'm trying to say. And then disable input. I also want to do a keyboard E event here. For this, we do want to go into our AC inventory component for a second and make a new function. This one is going to be add item. It's going to have two inputs. One is going to be the master item class. One is going to be integer. It's going to be item and quantity. We can promote these to local, so local item. We are going to check if local item, get the defaults, if it is a stackable item. If it is not a stackable item, well, we're going to make a new function. We're going to call it add non-stackable. It's going to have an input of our master item. Local item. There we go. We're going to do a for each loop with break through our contents. And while we're looping, we want to break this array element and we want to check if the item is valid class. And we want to branch that. If it is a valid class, then it's not a free slot and we're handling non-stackables. So if it's so we don't want to do anything. But if it's not a valid class, that means it's a free slot, and then we want to break out of our for each loop. Then we want to go into a second branch. If it's still true, then we want to return with a success node that is going to be unticked. However, if it is false, then we want to get our inventory. Then we want to set item info at index. We want to set it to the index that we found, so it's the array index up here. And we want to set it to the local item, and the quantity is just going to be 1. Then we can return with a success. Now we can go back to add item, and we can, so if it's not stackable, then we want to add non-stackable. The item is the local item, and then the branch is coming out. If it's not successful, well, then we're going to return with two outputs. So a success and a integer which says remaining. That's going to be our local quantity. We were not successful though. If it is true, we want to get our local quantity and we want to decrement that integer. So basically remove 1 and set it. Then we want to check if the new value is greater than 0. If it is not greater than 0, then we're done. We can return success and 0 remaining. Or if it is still, if it is higher, then we want to go back to our first branch. We go back here because we are going to use the same route for our stackables in a second. We are going to make a new prior function. It's going to be find valid stackable index. It's going to have an input of our master item. And we're going to promote that to a local item. And now we want to do a for each loop again on our contents with break to check if it's basically stackable, and yeah, you'll see. We're going to break this. We're going to check if the item is the same as the local item. So the item on the index that we're looking at is the same as the local item and boolean. If the quantity at the index that we're looking at is less than the max stack size, so let's get our local item and break that. If it is less than a max stack size, okay, so now we know we have some room here. There is some space here that we can add to. So then we want to break out if we find this. So if this is true, then we want to break out. Again, we go down into a second branch just to double check it on completed. So if this is false, then we're going to return with a boolean success, not actually valid found. Actually, you can just do success, doesn't matter. And the other one is going to be index, which is of course going to be an integer. This is not a success though if we come out as false. If we come out as true, however, that is going to be a success. And we have found a index up here, the array index. Can't actually put it in. There we go. This is a pure function. Did I forget to say that? Yeah. This is a pure function. Now let us head back into add item. We want to go in after true, we want to go into find valid stackable index. So we're looking for a valid stackable index for our item, that is our local item. If we do not find any, then we want to try to add a non-stackable. This doesn't necessarily say that it's a non-stackable, it's just our function is called a non-stackable. This is just going to add one if it finds a spot free. And once it has found a spot free, if it does, then it's going to go through here and then it's going to pass back here and it's going to be a stackable. So it's going to go up here again, but this time it's going to find an index, if that makes sense. Then we want to make a new function. This is our final function. It's going to be called add to stack. Wait, have we made add to stack? This is basically how we did the on drop as well. It's basically just the same thing. Which means that we can actually probably go to inventory slot and go to on drop and add to stack, and we can probably just steal all of this. Go to our inventory content and paste it, and let's see what we can steal and what we can't. So we can remove our branch. Let's paste it properly. There we go. So we can remove our branch and plug in the new branch. Now we're just going to go and fix some stuff. So we want to check if the quantity are on our slot, right? So let's get our contents and let's get a copy at the local index. That is going to be our quantity, like so. You can remove those two. Plus the quantity, the local quantity, like so, is less than or equal to, well, the defaults max stack size, like so. You can delete this that we made previously. If that is true, then we can just get our inventory contents like so, plus goes into there, item goes into there, and then we need the local quantity. And this goes to our slot, so we can just set item info index. Item becomes that, quantity becomes that, just holding control and move them, like so. And that is going to be on the local index, like so. Now we can remove that and plug this in. Now let's do the false. You can right click this node and do a create local variable, and that's going to fix that problem. Now we want to do the same thing down here, so let's get this and plug it into the top part, remove that. Then we want to get the max stack size. Now where did we put that? We got that over here. And now we want to do this get node up here. You can also use get item at index to be fair. And this is going to become the max stack size. So let's get the defaults and break that open. Plug in the max stack size. This is going to be on our on the local index. So set item info index. Index is the local index, and then we can remove this at the end here, and then do a return node with a integer, which we're going to call overflow remaining, and that's going to be our local overflow. And that should handle our add to stack. The index is the index that we found here. The item is the local item, and the quantity is the local quantity. Now we can set local quantity to the remaining. Check if the remaining is greater than 0. If it is not, then we return with a success. If it is, we go back to where it all began. And that is our add stack. Now we can go to our dropped items. When we press E, we want to loop through our items dropped, do a for each with break. We want to, for each of the loops, we want to get our player ref. We want to get our AC player get player inventory. We want to call our add item function. Do we want to break out of this actually? Yeah, so we want to call our add item function. At the element, we want to add the item like so. The success is going to go out to the branch. If we are not successful, then we want to break out into another branch. And if this is true, then we're going to destroy the actor. If this is false, then we're going to get our items dropped. We're going to set array element at the index size to fit. Item becomes that, and we're going to set it. The remaining becomes the quantity, and the item becomes the item still. Then we're going to get our pickup, and we're going to update info. And we're going to get our items dropped and update it with that. That is going to handle our pickup as well. Now we just need to go into our HUD for a second. This canvas panel, we're going to make a variable. We're going to call it HUD canvas. This is for later. We're also going to make it visible. Then we're going to override on drop on our HUD. And on drop, we are going to cast to inventory drag drop. We're going to spawn actor from class. The actor is going to be our dropped items. The transform we're going to split. Dropped items do need to have our items dropped to be exposed and editable. Now back into our HUD, refresh this. Get your player ref. Get world location from your capsule. And then get world rotation from your capsule. Get the forward vector of your rotation. Multiply that by a float. So right click and create a float. I'm going to do 100. Now we can add the location together with the forward vector, and that is going to be a location. The items dropped, we're going to just do it like this for now. Get details, and we're going to make array. We'll split that, item and quantity. Now we can return with a success. Let us see if this is actually spawning. It is spawning. It's telling us that it's 1, and we can add it. This should now fill up that, and yeah. So now we got our little pickup, and we're able to do that. Our add item is also fully completed. So yeah, this is a good place to end it. In the next one, I have no idea what we're going to do. Probably split stacks, and I hope I'll see you then. Until next time, bye-bye.